Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie and today we're going to be talking about all of the thriller recommendations I have for you. I actually went back and rewatched my last video, which is just my first ever thriller recommendations, and I realized I kind of do need to do a part 2, and I did have a few requests to do part 2, so here you go. The first one that I want to talk about is one that I just finished last night, and that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. And this is more horror than thriller, I would say. So if you're looking for something that's a little more on the horror thriller side, definitely check this one out. This one had me so grossed out, so freaked out and scared. I will let you know this, if you don't like feeling of something on your skin or under your skin, this one is not for you. And this, I should not have read this one, but this was just crazy. But anyways, it follows this guy named Tim, who is a Boy Scout troop leader, I believe, and he takes a set of 5 boys out onto this remote island, you know, off, I think it's Canada. Yeah, it's like off the shore of Canada. Like no one's around. They're doing a weekend trip like they do every year. And then they all of a sudden just get a unexpected visitor. He's very pale, very thin, and very hungry. And things just get so crazy from there. So I would recommend this one if you're looking for more of a horror than a thriller, but I felt like this was worth mentioning in this video. One of my personal favorite thriller types is domestic thrillers, and I thought I put this one in my last video, but apparently I didn't. But I would recommend The Last Mrs Parrish by Liv Constantine. I absolutely love this book. I think this is a great one. It had a great twist at the end. I've talked about it several times, but just to give you like a rough summary, it is about a girl named Amber who doesn't really have much, and she meets this woman named Daphne, and she makes it her mission to basically take her life, basically. Like, she wants to be her, she wants the lifestyle, her husband, the money, everything. And wow, that's all I gotta say. This book was so good. If you like a good, like, twisted, like, domestic thriller, I think you should read this one right now. One book that I just recently read was so dark and twisted that it was crazy to read about. And the thing is, there wasn't like a really big like twist at the end. Like, you kind of knew what was happening the entire time. And that is The Roanoke Girls. Like, this one was so interesting. Like, this one follows a girl named Lane whose mother passed away when she was like 15 years old, I think. And she goes and lives with this like long distant family, and she meets her cousin Allegra, and it goes from chapters from like in the past to present day. And in the present day, I think it's about 15 years later, I think, or maybe 10, I'm not 100% sure, but Lane gets a call from her grandfather saying like, Allegra's missing, you need to come home. And this one is so dark and twisted because it's got a certain like one particular thing that's happening, and the entire like halfway, the first half, I was basically saying like, is this really happening? Like, why is no one talking about this? And yeah, like, if you think you know what's happening, you're right, but like, you just want to keep going because it's so dark and twisted. I would recommend this one. It's also under 300 pages, so it's a very short read. In my last video, I mentioned a few like thriller romances, and a lot of people reached out to me saying I didn't know thriller romances were even a thing. So I find them hard to find, so I thought I would mention another one. This is He Will Be My Room by K.A. Tucker. K.A. Tucker usually writes romances like The Simple Wild and Wild at Heart, I think is her newest release. But this one I would find as like a thriller romance. It's definitely got more romance than thriller, but I don't know, like, I gave this one 3 stars, which doesn't mean it was a bad book. It's just, I think I read this book not at the right time. Like, I felt like there was a lot of stuff going on. I feel like if you like romances, but you want a little, like, thriller aspect to it, definitely check this one out. This one involves a woman named Maggie who has grown up with her best friend, Celine. And ever since they, like, you know, became adults, like, they've kind of, like, lived 2 separate lives, but they've always kept in touch. And basically Maggie finds out that Celine has taken her own life, so she comes back. I think she's like in another country, so she comes back to help out with like sorting her stuff because Celine's only relative, which was her mother, can't do it. And so Celine lived in this apartment complex, and Maggie finds this note in her apartment that makes her think that she was seeing somebody before she passed away. And there's like a dark secret mysteriousness to what's going on. And this one, it was so good. Like, as I'm thinking about it, like, I really do think this is more of a 4-star read for me. But at the time, I just wasn't in the mood for this, but I wanted to finish it. So I would recommend this one. So definitely check out this one if you can. If you want a book that's gonna make you feel like you're on the edge of your seat the entire time, this one will do it. And that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I feel like most people have read this one, but I definitely want to mention it because I just recently read this one a few months ago. This one follows a girl named Darby. She's trying to get home because her mother is sick and almost passing away. And she's in this blizzard and she has no choice but to pull over at this rest stop. And while she's outside trying to get a cell service, she finds out that there's this van parked in the parking lot with a child in a cage. And so now she's stuck with 4 other people at this rest stop and she has no idea whose van this is. And so she tries her best to, you know, 1, save herself, and for 2, save this child. And oh boy, like, if you think you know what's happening, you're completely wrong. Like, this one had so many twists, so many turns. Like, I was not breathing when I was reading this. Like, such a fun ride. I would recommend this one. I also think this would be a really good movie as well, just hint, hint, out in the world. So I would definitely check this one out. In my last video, I also mentioned like beginner to thrillers, and I think I did Sherry LaPena's books, but I do have another one that's not as thrilling as most of them, but I felt like it's still a good thriller, and that is The Arrangement by Robin Harding. This is the only Robin Harding book I've ever read, but I believe like I've heard other people mention that her books are very similar, like they're not as like crazy thrilling, but like they still have like a good like tiny speck of thriller. I think you would like this one. This one follows a girl, I forgot her name, Natalie. She is young, broke, kind of stupid too, but basically she is almost getting ready to get evicted from her apartment. She's a struggling art student in New York, and somehow she finds like this like sugar daddy app, and so she meets this guy who is the other main character. I can't remember his name, but basically she kind of gets into this like arrangement with him to be like her sugar baby and he could be her sugar daddy, and then things just get a little out of hand, if I can say. So I really like this one. I think I gave it like 4, maybe 4.5 stars, so I would definitely check this one out. The next books that I want to talk about are from the same author. I have two different styles. Like, so I have a good classic thriller, which is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This one follows a woman who, when she was a teenager, she went to this summer camp. She bunked with like 3 or 4 other girls, and then in the middle of the night they disappeared. And she's always like struggled with it in her life, that she never knew what happened. And then couple of years later, she gets this opportunity to come back to the camp when they're reopening to be like their art counselor, I guess you can kind of say. And then she starts piecing things back together of what actually happened. And I think like a few other people go missing. So this one was really, really good, especially if you're looking for a good summer read. A good summer camp in the middle of the woods seems perfect. But the other one I want to talk about is a new release, and I don't have it with me because my friend's borrowing it, but it would be Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This book was so good. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's my favorite Riley Sager. It's either that one or The Last Time I Lied, but I think just because I just recently read it, I'm going to say it's my favorite. But this one follows a girl named Maggie, where she was 5 years old. She moved into this house with her 2 parents. They stayed there for 20 nights, and then in the middle of the night, they just left because it was haunted. So now, a couple of years later, her dad wrote a book about what happened. It's a very famous book. She's always lived in the book's shadow in a way. and her father passes away and she inherits the house. So she goes back to basically like renovate it and possibly sell it. But she also deep down kind of wants to know exactly what happened because she doesn't believe the house was haunted. And then some spooky things happen. I loved this book. It actually made me creeped out a little bit. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had to make sure like doors and closets were shut before I went to bed. Such a good book. Like, probably, I would say probably my favorite thriller that I read this year. Which, Behind Closed Doors, which is one of my favorites, was one of those books. But I don't know, like, I just loved this book. And people say it's like Haunting of Hill House vibes, so I may have to check out that show because I've never actually watched it, so. Alright guys, that is all of my thriller recommendations so far. Let me know if you would like a part 3. I'd be happy to do that once I get some more thrillers read. Definitely leave a comment down below if you've read any of these or if you have any thriller recommendations. I'm always looking for recommendations. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I try to put out a video at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I also have an Instagram. It's at readingwithjess_. And I guess I will see you guys in the next one. Bye y'all.